This video is based on the comic book, The Biography of Sakyamuni Buddha by Venerable Master Sing Yun, with illustrations by Terry Lim and published by the Fo Guang Publications in Malaysia. It is produced by BLIA Florida Chapter, Lotus Subchapter for Guangming Temple in Orlando, Florida. Greetings. I'm a facilitator of English Dharma and a practitioner at the Guangming Buddhist Temple in Orlando, Florida. In honor of Buddha's birthday, we'd like to present to you the 8 stages of Buddha's practice. It details the life of Siddhartha Gautama on his journey to become a Buddha, an enlightened teacher of the middle path. Segment 1, Birth and Childhood. Beneath the Himalayan mountains, there was a prosperous country led by the Sakya clan. King Suddhodana and his wife, Queen Maya, happily ruled the country, but longed for a son, an heir to which they could pass the throne. Then one night, Queen Maya dreamed of a beautiful elephant flying high with a child on its back. As if the dream told the future, she would soon learn she was with child. And then one day, as she and the king were walking through a garden, she gave birth to a prince. A bright light shined on the baby, and as the story goes, the child took 7 steps and was showered by both warm and cool water falling down from the skies. All was good. But soon, a prophet emerged and told his father that the child would either become a virtuous king who rules the world, or would renounce worldly pleasures and attain Buddhahood. That worried the king. So to ensure his son remained in the palace, he made a dedication to shield his son from the suffering of the outside world and to bathe him in indulgence. The king named his child Siddhartha, meaning all wishes are fulfilled, and the whole nation rejoiced. And so Siddhartha grew up, well educated and in good health, and unaware of the suffering of the world.
Stage 2, the path to renunciation. One day the prince escaped the palace walls to see life as it really is. He saw an old man who once was young. He saw a sick man who once was healthy. And he saw a dead man who once had lived. Siddhartha could not forget these images and the suffering that exists in the human world. To keep the prince away from these thoughts, the king did his best to distract him with worldly pleasures, but all this could not tempt Siddhartha. Then one day, outside the palace, the prince met a monk who renounced the mundane world to seek emancipation from human suffering. This encounter inspired the prince to leave the palace with its worldly pleasures and concerns to seek the path of enlightenment. His journey took him deep into the forest where the ascetics lived. Ascetics sought enlightenment by enhancing their suffering. Some wrapped themselves in thorns, some immersed in water, some strained under heavy rocks, and some let fire burn their skin. Siddhartha considered their ideas, and after some discussions, realized their ideal was different than his. And after staying the night with the ascetics, he bid his farewell and continued on his journey.
Segment 3, the path of emancipation. Siddhartha's journey took him far and wide. He visited great kingdoms and spoke with wise men. A king was impressed with his outstanding appearance. He offered Siddhartha half his land to stay and teach his people. Siddhartha explained that he had abandoned worldly things to cultivate the path of emancipation. He said, "A wise person should shun the desires of the senses, as they eventually lead to suffering." He stated his wish to end the cycle of rebirth and help all sentient beings do the same. After visiting many religious teachers not finding his answers, Siddhartha found himself once again in the forest of the ascetics. and understood he could rely only on himself for cultivation and enlightenment. He vowed not to leave until he achieved his aspiration, and as the ascetics do, denied himself all but a morsel of food and drink to remain focused in deep meditation. Despite his intense practice, Siddhartha realized his afflictions, thoughts, and desires had not been extinguished. He realized his practice had failed.
Stage 4. Defeat of the temptation of evil. Despite his failure, Siddhartha continued his ascetic meditation for 6 more years. Suddenly, he came to a conclusion: for our minds to be freed, we must attach to neither suffering nor comfort, as both are extremes. We must focus in the middle path. After gaining his strength and adorning a monk's robe, he restarted the journey of emancipation. Siddhartha sat under a Bodhi tree and resolved not to rest until he had attained enlightenment and liberation from the cycle of birth to death. As he meditated, evil temptation tried to break his will and attack with the pleasures of the 5 senses. But Siddhartha prevailed, and the battle came to an end, and flowers fell from the sky.
Stage 5. The Enlightenment of Buddha. With his mind now clear from distractions, Siddhartha had several revelations. He saw the cause and effect of all things. He completely let go of thoughts of aversion and attachment, and realized the ever-changing nature of all things in the universe. Thus, he escaped the endless cycle of birth and death. Underneath the Bodhi tree, Siddhartha had attained the innate Buddha nature and became the fully enlightened one. He was no longer a prince. He was no longer Siddhartha. He was now Sakyamuni Buddha. Now enlightened, Buddha began to spread his teachings, the Dharma, to all sentient beings. His first students were ascetics he had known from the forest. He taught them the Buddhist path to enlightenment, also known as the Middle Way or the Noble Eightfold Path. He taught the true nature of this human existence, the 4 Noble Truths. He said, "It is with these teachings we can achieve our true Buddha nature and end suffering." These 5 students became the first 5 Buddhist monks. Together, they embarked to teach the Dharma to the suffering world.
Stage 6. The Return. Sakyamuni Buddha, having attained enlightenment, traveled with his followers along the river bank and began his journey to spread the teachings of Buddhism. Wise men and their followers heard his words of the Dharma and took refuge in the Buddha. He taught them that greed, hatred, and ignorance are the source of suffering. Generosity is the antidote of greed, and all things arise because of causes and conditions. As his popularity grew, monasteries were built for his followers, the monks, to live, learn, and practice. Buddha taught them that all sentient beings ought to accumulate merits by avoiding all evil deeds and cultivating kindness. Finally, Prince Siddhartha, now Sakyamuni Buddha, returned to his father's palace and was greeted with open arms. Buddha sought to repay his father's kindness and love in raising him by offering him the Dharma teachings. His family rejoiced at his return and recognized his supreme enlightenment.
Stage 7. Spreading the Dharma. Sakyamuni Buddha returned to the monastery with his disciples and continued to deliver his teachings there. Several years later, he was informed that his father, the king, was failing and wanted to see his son again before he died. The Buddha went to his father's side and sat with him, As he peacefully passed away, he took comfort in the words of the Dharma. For the next 45 years, the Buddha spread his message throughout northeastern India. He established orders of monks and nuns, believing both men and women should teach the Dharma. And he received the patronage of kings and merchants, enabling the creation of monasteries. But there were those who wished to harm the Buddha, as they feared his popularity and questioned his legitimacy to teach. They did their best to cause harm and even murder. But their plans were futile against the pure and supremely virtuous Buddha. Sakyamuni Buddha carried on and dedicated his life to spreading his message, to free all sentient beings from suffering.
Stage 8, the Buddha's death and release from the cycle of suffering. At the age of 80, the Buddha told his followers he would soon pass away. He said, "Do not feel sad. The Dharma lives. As long as all of you engage and abide by what I have taught you. To achieve liberation, one should practice the Four Noble Truths and the Noble Eightfold Path." The Buddha then asked them 3 times, "Are there any last questions or doubts? Are there any last questions or doubts? Are there any last questions or doubts?" But they all remained silent. Then at the stroke of midnight, the Buddha passed away, and it is said the earth trembled. The Buddha was cremated, and his ashes were given to the rulers of 8 kingdoms in northern India. Shrines were built to house the ashes. Since his death, Buddhism has reached every corner of the world and currently teaches the path of happiness, compassion, and freedom from suffering to over 5 million practitioners. In the Dharma realm, there is no difference between the Buddha and us, our Buddha nature, and at no time are we separated from the Enlightened One.
Thanks so much for joining us for this beautiful celebration. To learn more about the Buddha and Buddhism, please visit our website, orlandobuddhism.org, for information about our online classes. After COVID is over, the temple will return to welcome practitioners, students, and visitors. We hope you can come for a visit, a class, or to share a meal with us. Until that time, we wish you peace and happiness.